Greetings everyone, peace to you all. Welcome to another episode of Praiseworthy Reviews, where we go through video games to see if they're excellent and commendable. Today we will be reviewing Tactical Breachwizards, a turn-based tactics puzzle game by developer Suspicious Developments. As usual, we will be evaluating the game based on 5 criteria: fun factor, educational value, cultural value, spiritual value, and cost. For context, prior to this review, I have finished this game to the credits. I played this on hard, which generally did not feel that hard to complete the basic objectives. So without further ado, let's jump in. The core gameplay of Tactical Breachwizards consists of mainly 3 elements: dialogue selection, investigation, and actual tactical combat. The dialogue selection or chatting, while simple, can be fun and interesting. Unlike BioWare RPGs, where dialogue options are often good guy, neutral, and evil guy, the dialogue options in Breachwizards often represent different conversational directions or ideas, which makes your responses more organic and enjoyable. I like how the game lets you know which options will continue the conversation in a direction where you will not be able to go back, so you know to save that option for last. One thing I didn't like was how the game did not make clear the difference between situations where you would get to choose all the options in different orders and situations where you are responding with only one option. The game also turns investigating plot points into a gameplay mechanic, leaning into Jen's PI background. Using the cliché red strings, the player makes connections between various characters, locations, items, and events. While this was generally simple, it was a fun way to ensure that the player knows what's going on, and there is plenty of funny comments and writing to keep the player engaged while fleshing out characters and lore. Besides chatting and investigating, the other core gameplay mechanic is the tactical combat. Unlike XCOM, there are no percentages, no randomness, no fog of war, no uncertainty. And with Zan's foresight and ability to rewind, you can see how things will play out and ensure that the choices you make are really the ones you wanted, without misclicks or mistakes. There are too many abilities to talk about individually, but I wanted to give some general ideas. Abilities in Tactical Breachwizards are often about synergy and teamwork. Many abilities do direct damage, either based on line of sight or in AoEs. There are also the usual type of things like applying status effects and damage over time as well. While combat can be about knocking out all enemies via their life totals, one aspect of combat that is heavily featured is that of moving enemies off the grid, usually out of a window, which counts as instantly defeating them. This is surprisingly satisfying and doesn't get old, even at the end of the game. In this way, the game is very reminiscent of Into the Breach, which felt more like a puzzle game. Tactical Breachwizards feels very similar. As your team levels up, additional perks can be selected to power up each character's main abilities. Some of these are more useful than others in many situations, but this feels like a minor nitpick given the wide range of abilities and generally good balance of the game. Each of the wizards on your team feels powerful in their own way, with none of them feeling useless, even if some perks are weaker than others. Despite gameplay being basically only role-playing dialogue and tactical combat, the game does these 2 things very well, and I never really felt like I wasn't having a good time while playing. Therefore, I'm going to give Tactical Breachwizards 5 stars for fun factor. Like many tactics games, there is a lot of educational value in this game. Even though the general difficulty of the levels are not too hard, many of the bonus objectives are surprisingly difficult. I often sat staring at the same level for a long time because I didn't want to move on without completing one of the bonus objectives, feeling that the solution was right there, just out of reach. Even as the player experiments, if the proposed solution fails, the player can just immediately rewind, allowing the player to have maximum time thinking and minimal time having to reset up the puzzle. As a result, the sequencing and puzzles just generally feel really great. I especially enjoyed the optional anxiety dreams, as well as some of the highly creative boss levels. Because some of the solutions require very out-of-the-box thinking, there is a scaffolding system that allows players to get hints, from vague and small hints to specific and easy ones. I tried not to use too many of these, but there was one moment in the game where I just could not think of a possible solution, when the first hint, even though really vague, suddenly allowed the solution to click. Overall, I felt that the puzzles were quite clever, and I really appreciated the level designs of many of the stages. Also, the game reminded me of a vocabulary word that I've basically never used: defenestrate. Based on the amount of thinking that I had to do while playing, I'm going to give the game 5 stars for educational value. The visual style of Tactical Breach Wizards, while not exceptional, feels in line with the tone of the game. Characters have generally simplistic models and textures, but have enough detail to convey the general personality of the character and the nature of their abilities. Many of the cosmetic outfits, while again not detailed, are fun and creative and signify a general attention to detail and design, if not in visual realism. The background of the 3D grid is reasonably detailed, and environments are distinct enough to give each level a different feel, despite the fact that in the end, every level is basically just a series of rooms with windows. The soundtrack only has a few main songs, but they generally work to convey the moods. Relaxed dialogue, thrilling action, Jeopardy-like thinking. There is no voice acting, which is a shame, but given the indie nature and cheap asking price, it's understandable that they passed on this. The narrative of the game is surprisingly excellent for a tactics game. The setting is a very generic Dresden Files type urban fantasy and is not particularly interesting, but the writers do a good job of making it lighthearted and charming. The character development and the dialogue are both very strong. Each of the characters have their own quirks and are flawed in endearing ways, but it is a plot that is surprisingly sophisticated. What started as kind of a bland heist plot archetype turns into a globe-trotting conspiracy with enough twists and turns to keep the player engaged. The writing is top-notch. This is easily the funniest game I have played all year, and it was able to make me laugh out loud multiple times with the silliness of its humor. Honestly, many aspects of the game are funny, from the dialogue to the mission objectives to the game summaries. Since it just launched August of 2024, it's still a little early to discuss sales, but at time of recording it has an overwhelmingly positive rating on Steam after nearly 6,000 reviews. Overall, considering the game as a work of art and its cultural impact, I'm going to assign Tactical Breach Wizards 4 stars for its cultural value. Given the mature urban fantasy setting, there is a lot of negative content in this game. One of the protagonist's meeting places is a bar, and they regularly drink. There is one character with homosexual attraction towards another, but even the suggestion of this attraction is subtle and not in your face, and there is no actual sexual activity shown or even implied in the game. The occult is generally portrayed positively, although since this takes place in a different world where people unlock powers from crises rather than connecting with evil spirits, how this is viewed can really vary. For me personally, I think it was okay. Initially, I felt that religion was portrayed negatively, since many reviews said that this was a story about fighting against a theocracy. After finishing the game, however, I think the writer does make an honest attempt at distinguishing theocracies from genuine faith. Also, like many adult games, there is a lot of vulgar language, with a variety of profanity and particularly the F-bomb being dropped many times in the dialogue. On the positive side, what is sort of surprising about the game, given the SWAT-like nature of the setting, is that the good guys do not technically kill their enemies. In fact, there are multiple conversations in the game about how most of the good guys do non-lethal fighting, and the objectives always refer to knocking out enemies rather than killing them. Aside from this, the other notably positive aspect is the portrayal of friendship. With all that said, I think the game is generally appropriate for late teens, but probably not children. Despite the fantastic nature and somewhat loose morals in the game, it does ask some serious moral questions that I think give it an overall positive message. For more analysis on the themes of the game, check out my biblical themes video for Tactical Breach Wizards. Overall, I'm going to give this game 3 stars for spiritual value. Tactical Breach Wizards does well both on time and financial costs. For the time poor, according to the game description on Steam, the game can be completed in around 15 hours. Without doing additional content, but trying to do most of the bonus objectives as I went, the main story took me approximately 20 hours. For the time rich, there's plenty to do, with all story missions having bonus objectives for some characters, as mentioned before. In addition, there are extra dream levels, where the levels are highly focused on puzzles and look a lot less realistic than the story missions. There are also proving grounds, where players can play a survival mode, and both of these provide a lot of additional quality content to the game. The game respects your time by allowing you to skip all dialogue, jump to the missions that you want to play or replay, and generally having most quality of life features that you would want to streamline gameplay so you can focus on the fun. Tactical Breach Wizards retails for $19.99 USD and can sometimes be found for 10% off, which I consider excellent value. Overall, based on the good content value, easy narrative accessibility, and reasonable asking price, I'm going to give this game 5 stars for cost. Tactical Breach Wizards is an outstanding tactics puzzle game, being generally accessible and frustration-free while still having some truly difficult and creative puzzles in the vein of Into the Breach. However, where Tactical Breach Wizards exceeds the other Breach game is that of its incredible narrative. I really enjoyed my time with Jen, Zan, and the rest of the team, and I hope that Suspicious Developments continues to produce great games. Based on the criteria discussed in the video, I subjectively assign Tactical Breach Wizards the rating of Genre Gem. That's all I have for you in this video. Bless you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If this video blessed you in some way, please consider watching some of my other videos, subscribing, or sharing with me some of your thoughts in the comments below.